A good-hearted and responsible black youngster believes he is merely being kind to a crippled woman. But the next day, he has the shock of his life, something that alters every aspect of his existence. Welcome to USA Stories channel. Do not forget to subscribe and activate the bell button to receive all new updates. Now let's go to the story. Like many others, Sylvia was an independent and rebellious young lady. Now, if Sylvia hadn't used them for such horrible and cruel purposes, these qualities would have been noteworthy and commendable. You see, Sylvia and her mother, Harper, were left behind after her father passed away when she was just 14 years old. He was an impoverished guy who left little for the family, which had a significant impact on Harper and Sylvia. Harper had to get a job and put in a lot of effort in order to pay for herself and her kid, so she didn't have time to grieve her dearly departed spouse. However, Sylvia became even worse after the death and began acting in a nasty and disobedient manner. She would abuse, mistreat, and yell at her mother, making her feel like a bad mother. Harper did her best, though. When Sylvia was ready to start college, she even resigned from her job. Despite providing daily rides to and from the campus, her daughter still mistreated her. Sylvia eventually moved in with a wealthy man she had met. She spent all of her time with her new lover and hardly gave her mother any attention after that. She was concerned about her daughter's safety and refused to visit, phone, or text her mother. Instead, she would leave her mother alone. As the years passed, the relationship continued to deteriorate. In actuality, Sylvia informed her lover that her mother had passed away when he inquired about her. Telling a fib was a horrible idea, but eventually Sylvia began to feel ill. She would cough all the time and had a horrible chest. She was breathing heavily and in excruciating discomfort. Every few days, the elderly and impoverished woman needed someone to deliver her medication. Nevertheless, Sylvia remained unmoved to take action after learning of her mother's condition. Harper eventually simply grew too old, sick, and fragile to continue, and she died in her sleep, feeling alone and depressed. Even though Sylvia didn't love her back, she remained in love with Sylvia till the very end. After several years, Sylvia ultimately wed the wealthy man. For a long while, they were content, but sadly, they soon began to have disagreements. They would quarrel and bicker, then get back together and have a little period of happiness. The romance was very exhilarating. They had 2 children, a girl called Isabel and a boy named Mark, since they felt that having kids may be helpful. While Mark was diligent and focused, Isabel unfavorably reminded Sylvia of herself. Isabel was just as rebellious as Sylvia had been when she was younger. It was a terrible sensation when the boot was on the other foot, but she began to treat her mother in the same manner that Sylvia had previously treated Harper. Despite everything, Sylvia focused on her relationship, which was collapsing around her. The two finally split up, and before he passed away, he even amended his will to give all of his wealth to his son Mark. Sylvia was really upset by this since she had hoped to inherit the riches. When Mark finally reached the age when he could attend college, Isabel just became more insensitive toward her mother. In addition to growing older and more worn out, Sylvia was also dealing with personal health issues. When the time finally came, her children had to choose between putting Sylvia in an inexpensive, run-down house that would hardly take care of her or paying for her to go to a posh private home where her requirements would be satisfied. Isabel, the ever-resentful girl, went with the second option. She seemed to be hoping for her mother to suffer. Sylvia detested her time at the awful home after being transferred there. Not only was it filthy and chilly, but no one seemed to care about the elderly residents or the personnel. They all seemed to be waiting to go, either at the conclusion of their shift or when they passed away. Sylvia had plenty of time in this setting to consider her own treatment of her mother. Did she feel any regrets? She did, of course. If she could go back and make things different, she would, but it was far too late. She seemed to be receiving the benefits of her early seeds. If karma existed, which it didn't according to her, Sylvia was undoubtedly receiving her comeuppance. She reached her breaking point. Sylvia exited the house. Even though she was elderly, feeble, and sluggish, She simply couldn't stay there. With nowhere else to go, she ventured out onto the chilly and perilous streets, unsuitable for an elderly woman such as Sylvia. Isabel and Mark received word of their mother's disappearance very soon. Now a self-made millionaire, Mark was enraged with his sister for placing her in that house. It had been his intention to place her in the posh, pricey one. He was aware that entrusting his sister with the duty was a mistake. Mark ventured out into the street to look for his mother, but she was nowhere to be seen. Winter was coming, and it seemed unlikely that anyone would make it out alive, let alone an old lady like Sylvia. In the end, he placed an ad in the neighborhood newspapers asking if anybody had seen Sylvia and included her picture. If so, they were to get in touch with him right away. He had no choice except to wait, hope, and pray. Isabel appeared to be experiencing guilt as well. A black lad named George was bussing plates to and from the kitchen and serving customers at a restaurant on the opposite side of town. He was working, listening to his boss's tirade and the other waiters in the kitchen, when he looked out the window and saw an elderly woman. She appeared quite chilly and was filthy. She looked to have trouble walking and had an excessive limp as a result of injuries to her legs sustained while living on the streets. He was unaware that this woman was actually Sylvia. Sylvia went to the door to look around and asked George for some bread so she could fill her stomach. After showing sympathy for the elderly, destitute woman in front of him, George entered the kitchen. Shortly after, he brought back a little loaf of bread and gave it to Sylvia. He grinned as she thanked him and walked slowly, limping out the door. George, nevertheless, was startled to see his supervisor approaching him and yelling. His supervisor took exception to his providing free food to the destitute. They weren't at a soup kitchen or food bank, they were in a restaurant. There was a fee for food if customers desired it. George was informed by the manager that patrons of a restaurant shouldn't anticipate free food. He was immediately dismissed for his behavior. George saw a newspaper on the ground as he was furious and unhappy while making his way home. It was open to the page with the picture of the elderly woman he had just felt sorry for. He came to a halt and picked up the thrown-away newspaper. He read the text that Mark had included in the paper, which was the missing person poster, underneath the picture of the elderly woman. When George realized it was the same woman from the picture, he called and set up the meeting. He then went to see Sylvia, who was munching the bread on a nearby bench. When they arrived at the rendezvous the following day, Mark hurried over to give Sylvia a hug and an embrace, telling her that he and the family had been really concerned about her. It was a huge relief to find her alive and somewhat healthy, as they had feared she would have been hurt, confined, or worse. Mark promised George a huge quantity of money that would change his life in appreciation for his assistance. Mark persisted, telling George that they were prepared to give up and that they would not have been able to get Sylvia back if he hadn't been so nice. At first, he declined the generous offer. George used the funds to purchase a little restaurant of his own. When it first opened, not only was it a huge success, but George also gave away free meals to the destitute. Considering how much Sylvia, Mark, and the rest of the family had improved his life, it was the least he could do for them. Isabel, on the other hand, asked her mother's pardon as soon as she found out that she was okay. Fortunately, Sylvia pardoned her despite her sincere regrets for how she had abused her mother. Isabel was, after all, her daughter, and Sylvia would always love her no matter what. That's when she finally realized why Harper, her own mother, had always loved her. Now it's your turn. What were your thoughts on this amazing tale? Had you been so nice as to give the elderly, destitute, and homeless woman some food? And if you had received an offer of money that may have changed your life, how would you have felt? Please feel free to share your ideas and opinions in the space provided below for comments. As usual, we would love to hear from you. Please remember to subscribe to our channel, give us a thumbs up, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our videos. If you enjoyed the tale, the next video that plays on your screen will probably move you too.